Welcome back to the Business Simple podcast. It's your host, James. I have my dear friend, Michael Karabassis with me. Michael, I've known for years. I'm sure he'll tell you a lot about his story and journey to this point, but I've known him since he was a mortgage advisor. He's been a property investor. He currently owns 2 businesses, commercial spaces and net funds.
Correct.
And I'm sure he will have a heap of insight into how he's gotten to here, some pretty entertaining stories from along the way. So thank you for joining, Michael.
My pleasure indeed. Looking forward to having a full chat, trying to not get too weird on it, you know me, and make sure this is clean and simple all the way through.
Yeah, well, Michael said something when we were waiting as we were setting up before, which was, if you can't hear me, you're not near me, or something to that extent. That probably sums him up pretty well.
I like yapping. I have 2 mouths, 1 ear. I like to make sure, I'm really good at this side of the fence, make sure I listen, trying to get better at it. But time is the enemy of that for me. I'm finding myself making sure I have that energy all the time. And sometimes it's kind of like telling people what you want is how you get to places. Yeah. So for me, that conversation of actually talking about it is so rare here. Yeah. Overseas they tell about yourself, but you actually talk about yourself in a way where you expect the other person to then talk about themselves. So you clearly know what each other's about.
Yeah.
Here, when you talk about yourself a little too much, people go, self-obsessed. I was like, no, now I'm asking questions about you. Let's build a journey here.
Yeah. I think that's probably been my thing about this series and the episodes that I've recorded so far that I've liked the most, is it's actually, you think like we've probably known each other for maybe 8 years,
yeah, wow.
Right? Like I worked at MediaWorks when we first met.
You remembered my coffee order, my smoothie order?
Yeah, I still remember it. Banana smoothie with a shot of coffee in it. It's such a weird drink.
Yeah.
You actually helped me remember it. But the at no point in time in our relationship, there's been like little insights, there's been things like that, but at no point in time have we ever sat down and been like, so tell me your entire story from start to finish in its entirety.
Yes.
Talk to me about the feeling at those different phases. And like, you will have friends, and if you're listening to this, you will have friends where you go, I really admire that person, I like what they do, I like what they're up to, I like who they are, but I have no insight into how they became that person.
Exactly.
And so that's been the cool part of this for me, is like, some of it have been people that I haven't known so well, which is even more, some of the episodes that I think I've recorded have actually shaped my way that I view the world, coming off the back of listening to some of these people talk. But it is a really cool thing to be able to do.
Well, you define your friendships in a different way too. There are so many superficial ones. Mm-hmm. Ones where we see each other randomly, we know of each other, especially in the working and the business capacity. You find yourself, I was talking to somebody the other day about this, how I feel like sometimes I could retire tomorrow because of the fact that all my friends are available all the time, because they've now been circulated to a group of people that are business owners, property investors, people that have availability within their day. Mm-hmm. And when you choose to retire, one of the biggest problems with that is doing something, having purpose.
Yeah.
I feel like there's so many people around these days, again, my curated circle, and you've got it as well, people that are available to catch up, learn from, do stuff, pick purpose from, and without purpose, what's the point?
It is funny how you wind up in these and people all the time ask me about the building a network thing, because I have so many such great relationships with such capable people. Like when I look at the people that I'm closest to, they're contributors to society. Yeah. And I get asked it all the time.
God loves a taker, eh?
Yeah, not me, but apparently, they have a place. But I think it is, I like that's, I view myself the same way, and you wind up connected with these people. So.
You do. It is nice to make sure that when you do meet people and they are contributing to society, you build yourself around. One of your, I suppose, most amazing talents is not only are you with these people, you're playing the game, you're keeping up, you're having a great time, but you're so damn likeable, it's a real annoyance, that people will actually introduce you to more people, and you'll get invited to things. And when we talk about that personal brand, when we talk about that relationship, networking journey, I was talking about with somebody today, it's not manipulation when you work with your relationship. It's a give and take. It's a seesaw. It's a quid pro quo situation where you are sitting there actually going, I want to offer you some value, and I want it back. Yeah. And you should be doing that in friendships as well. You give each other a little bit, take some energy, give some energy. There's a balance to it.
I think, to be fair, a big part of, and I said this to someone the other day that asked me this exact question about the building a network thing, is I think it's actually just all give. I think that you have to trust that something comes back, but you have to do it without that being a requirement.
Yes.
Like, you're like, I just want to provide unlimited value to these people, and I believe that if I do that to enough people, I will find a group of people that will also give value back. So you just play the game where you go, I'll go out and be ruthlessly giving to 100 people, knowing that probably only 5 will be my people, and that 95 of those people will take. But that's okay, because that's worth it to find those 5. And as soon as you view it that way, you go, this game makes sense. But also early days, especially like when we met and things like that, I didn't really understand that, so I got lucky with some good people early on.
You were young, you found some good people, and they took you on a good journey, but you were there for the ride.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about how in the early days how much money we would spend at the bar just to keep up with very little in our bank accounts, really. You know, neither of us probably ever had the conversation about our rough days in those times, but we showed up, smile on our face, we got the tab. How many people I've paid the tab for that have never ever responded in any even the smallest way?
Yeah,
now, you're not
we shouted at an
response.
entire real estate agency one day. They were having a company drinks, and then they all just left.
Let's be fair, one person said the drinks are on me to his firm, and then put them on our tab. Oh, Jesus. But then that's us. You know, you believe, you achieve, and you make sure it's a good vibe.
Yeah.
That synergy has happened throughout life so many times. When you meet people and you actually work through it, I would counter your actual point there with, people need to know what you're about, though.
Yeah.
That's the big problem. If you give, if they're not giving back, it's because they don't get you. They don't understand you. My hardest part for me has always been the fact that I don't have down days. I'm super energetic and super happy. Yes, I can get angry at a situation or I can get upset, but I don't do what I see a lot of other people do, is kind of beat yourself up for long periods of time or be that. I've always been the same.
Yeah, pretty optimistic.
You know, I grew up in a way where I didn't come from money. My dad was on the benefit through a lot of periods. I grew up in Linwood. I just saw the state of everybody around me. You know, you saw people, I knew a lot of people that died through suicide. I knew a lot of people that went through really tough times. And weirdly, I just was there as an energy source for people. I never really had it. You know, when I watched my family go through things, friends, exes, I all of a sudden got myself in a position where I realised I had my own superpower, which was the fact that I kind of was super happy all the time.
Yeah.
Now, people will take that from you. They'll abuse it. They'll come to you. They'll pull you on energy. And a great friend said to me recently, he goes, well, where do you get energy from? And I was like, well, it's weird because it comes from within. Yeah. But I think I'm very fortunate to have a great social circle, a great friend circle that if you need reality check, they'll be the first person to make fun of you and make sure that there is some good energy given back.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I've never heard about the vein in my forehead. You know, there is... Shout out to Jimmy. There is heaps of those things where your friend group needs to be there to humble you. But when your friend group's wrong, they will pull you back. They will make you unhappier. You know, we know it. It's said all the time. 5 friends around you make you who you are. You do need to change those people because throughout my life, that's what I've just done. You know, I'm with the people that put their effort into me. And I try to make sure I return that tenfold. So you are putting out, but you do need people to know, again, articulately, what you do. For me, when I go through the last few years, being inside the property game, I didn't really need anyone as clients. You know, we've spoken about this before where you and I had a gap in our friendship because you were on the hustle side of business, you know, growing this business, having staffing issues, having all these things. I was just buying buildings.
And you wanted to play golf on Fridays, and I was like, who the fuck doesn't work on a Friday?
I've had a few years of holiday. It's been nice, you know. But that is one of the big things of building a really nice portfolio of properties, having a really good team that works, you know, cohesively throughout that. You're able to pick and choose each other's jobs, and one person can be the deliver one half, and one person can be deliver the other half. That is so useful for you in the property side. In business, it can be the same. But when you're small, it's so insular. You're doing all these jobs, and if you can't outsource, if you can't find a management team, if you can't scale to that point that you can have some freedom, I mean, you're going to be pretty hurt. I played, funnily enough, golf with a guy who said to me, I just want to let you know I sold my business. And I was like, amazing, mate, congratulations. And I won't say the number. But he sold it for a good amount, life-changing enough, but not like, you know, moon money that is never going to do anything again. But as we sat there on a Friday, he goes, do you know this is the first time I've done this? I was like, play golf on a Friday? He's like, no, have lunch out on a Friday with some friends. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, 15 years of growing this business, And it was the first time he actually managed to have lunch on a Friday with some mates, go play golf and be relaxed because the business was on. I was like, wow, I do this a lot.
And like, don't get me wrong, I've had a lot of fun, a lot of fun, but like, my current season in business is not niceties. Like, in order to fit everything in that I'm trying to do, there is not fluff and fun. Like, if I get to hang out with my fiance and baby, I feel very lucky at the moment. It's like, it's fucking savage. And I'm comfortable with that, and provided I communicate properly, so is the people that are around me.
Yes.
But I get that. Like, when you just mentioned that, it gave me goosebumps, because I was like, I love that shit. I like that more than the sale bit. Like, I like knowing that there are other people out there that are doing things like that. And I'm doing this kind of personal branding thing where I'm trying to showcase a really good example of doing an exceptionally good job of personal branding over the next 90 days. And it sort of kicked off at the start of this week. And a big theme or a pillar in my personal brand is that work ethic thing, because I actually don't think I don't tell people about it. And I deliberately, up until probably a year ago, made my personal brand, I'm playing the game on easy mode, because I think it's more intimidating to your competition when you're growing fast and you're making it look like it's easy. And I've kind of realized that I'm doing the market a disservice pitching myself that way, because it's not how I got here. It's not how I got here.
People never see the actual work behind the scenes, but you sell that dream, and you know me well enough to know the same. I love telling people I'm a property investor, so I don't do much for a living, but they don't see the stresses, they don't see the up and downs, they don't see the journey. Yes, the difference with property to business, and I like to make the joke, I was sitting at a table with a bunch of private equity guys who, they were all from the business side. You know, they're looking at these large transactions, they're like, why would we even want to do property? I was like, you silly buggers want to work for a living. You realise buildings with tenants have these things, there's just gaps all the time. It's such a long process that you have this opportunity to buy something, put a tenant in, or even through the development process, all the people you work with are working for you. You're just waiting for news back. You kind of become reactive, and your only real activeness is finding the opportunities, maybe finding the money, but you can even have people do that for you. So property has these larger gaps which allow the little bits of slips along the way, which is finding time for a bit of golf, bit of those personal brand networking, just catching up with people, going home and doing your thing, having holidays, all that stuff, that's really important. But as you say, you know, the season, that changes. My business has changed so much in the last year as things have gone through so much that now I've been back at work since the 2nd. Basically had a 1 week in Bali and came straight back, and I just knew all the stuff I'd been building for towards 2025 was about to finally take off. And it was about, you know, a great friend said to me, I said, look, general chit chat, talking about New Year's resolutions. And I was like, well, have you got any New Year's resolutions? And they said something I just loved, which was, I don't do New Year's resolutions. I pick a word to help me define my year, because I like to have, you know, a bit of organicness in what's happening throughout the year, but it drives my purpose. And theirs was ownership, and it kind of meant a variety of things, owning what they do, making sure they maybe move into some ownership of their businesses and their properties and things that they're doing. For me, I was like, wow, just the most immediate one came to me, which was accountability. You know, the change in what's happened in my life meant I just had to make sure that no one was to blame except me if anything didn't go my way from here on. So came back to work on the 2nd. By the next week, I think 28 offers had gone out worth a certain amount, and just I was hunting on the phone every day and generating what I believed was the business process, especially with the people around me that want to build it with me. So all of a sudden that became really exciting. Cool. So all of a sudden, I feel like I've done 6 months of work in 29 days. You know, it's a great feeling to have, but you do have to balance that head down, bum up work with some rest.
And also, like, you hit a point where all of a sudden you have like kids or whatever, possibly at some point, and then like all of a sudden you go, oh, I didn't realize how easy it was prior. Like, I used to just work and train and sleep, and that was fine. That was perfectly sufficient. Like, that was an acceptable way to live. And like, and now you're like, oh, you really can't do that. You really can't.
Well, our inside joke was always James New Phase Wallace, because it was always, you know, there's always, now I'm on meat only, now I'm fucking high kickboxer, I've got all these different things I'm doing. I'm like, okay, which one can we do at the moment, mate? I need to figure out which way we're friending, you know?
It varied. Right, so just just to follow some sort of path. We're
Yes.
20 minutes in and we haven't actually got into step one. So tell me for the people that don't know who Michael Karabassis is,
Yes.
tell me your story. Tell me, you've referenced a couple of
Yes.
points and things like that. Go back as far as you'd like and then work your way through to the present day.
I think an important part is always the start. Don't need to talk about coming out of my mother. That's probably not an early one. But when you go through the motions of my childhood, I was an annoyingly happy kid. My dad would take me to the pub. I was probably playing on the slot machine with my dad. I grew up with a solo dad, really. My mum was away when I was young, so it was kind of just me and my dad and my great-grandma. Really luckily, my parents lied to get me into a really good primary school, Redcliffe's, which was a really good school. So being what seemed like the dumbest kid at Redcliffe's, when we finally got to go to a high school, and the only one we were zoned for because we lived in Linwood, I went to Linwood, but I was instantly in the top class. I don't think I even finished the entrance test, and I was still in the top class. Really enjoyed my time at Linwood, but I got to, I think I was 15, and I was like, right, I'm going to figure out a way to do something else. I figured out 15, I was young for my year, so this was basically starting sixth form, that I could do a couple of courses through then CPIT, and I could actually go to uni early and do a commerce degree prior to actually doing, instead of doing seventh form. I knew I could just do a couple of things. I like gaming the system. So I got me into, so dropped out of high school, then went to uni, did a certificate in IT prior, so I managed to get a bit of that tech background. I got really into my tech side, and then moved into University of Canterbury. Did about 2 years of marketing, absolutely loved it, but I remember sitting there second year, and I don't know if you've ever felt this when you talk to marketers. It's just a room of hundreds of people, and you know you're going to come out with the same degree as all of them. And I was like, this isn't for me. So went and worked full-time while I figured out what I wanted to do. That turned into working full-time and studying full-time. So I did an accounting degree. And I got to 3 years, 8 papers a year. 8 papers a year and 40, 50, 60 hours of work at work as well. So I was feeling like I was just basically at work, come home, lock myself in a bloody study, work until midnight, go to sleep, wake up at 5 in the morning, go to my job. And it was just that for almost 3 years until, funnily enough, in the third year, I managed to get into kind of being a part of business purchasing and getting involved in a random few opportunities that were around. I kind of had a bit of an eye for it, so I found a couple of little companies that I could buy and sell through connections, and then one company, a scaffold company, allowed me to come in and be a co-owner, but also they wanted me to run it, and I was 23. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I'll come in and help this. It was running pretty heavily in the in the red. They had brought in all this product from the UK, and the person in charge of it, a family member, was letting it kind of go negative. So we got out there and took a whole new distribution line. We did a higher part of it. There was so many opportunities within it. So got that up, and then I sold out and moved on, got a new person in charge, and I moved into banking. The funny part about banking was I just knew it was something that I was where my mind, because I loved finance, was going to take me, but I had to take a massive pay cut. You know, I think my starting salary in the bank was maybe 55k or something, and I was already on six figures. So I had to go massively backwards, but I knew it was something that I had to do, and you have to do that in your young years, I reckon. For the opportunity. And then while I was at the bank, I loved it. I just made sure I tried to outsell everybody. I made sure I just learned. I printed out policy the first day, so I'd be an absolute nerd for gaming the system. And then that turned into deciding, oh, well, went on holiday, and I sat there, and the funniest yarn, and it's probably a bit tongue-in-cheek, but I sat there in Texas in a spa pool with this very large man, and I was asking him about what he did, and his very large daughter was floundering around in the water. And I was like, these guys look like the happiest two people. I love Americans, the happiest two people on earth. And I was like, this is going to be good. I was like, what do you do for a living? And he's like, I do air conditioning, my man. And I was like, oh, well, heating, cooling, what do you do? I do heating, I do cooling. I'm the best damn man out here in Texas. And I was like, this is amazing. This guy just absolutely has his energy, loves what he does. He's in business, and he's just thriving for something that is more, even though the image to me of success was keep yourself fit and healthy. You know, you're at nice places, all these things. This guy owns a whole business, and he's just staying in a Motel 6 with me doing this. And I thought, I need to be better, you know, in all regards. So came back from that, quit the bank, and went to full commission as a mortgage broker. I was fortunate. You get that first pay about 3 months in of $3,000 on your first commission. You go, oh, don't know if I've made the right decision here, you know. And then the next month, things became okay. And I was fortunate back then that social media and video advertising was still newer.
Yeah.
So when I started doing the mortgage, and this is how we kind of met, when I started doing mortgage videos, I was just reaching sort of 20, 30,000 people a week.
Yeah.
And it was just, I never had to leave my desk. Again, put it out there, push it, doing marketing correctly, doing marketing with the right people. When you and I got together, the same thing. I asked you so many questions.
Yeah.
Applying that to your business just means you can sit there and just be good at what you do.
Yeah.
So I found myself getting pretty comfortable in that, but knew that because when I was brokering, I was very skilled in the second and third tier space, non-bank lending,
Yeah.
that I really wanted to make sure that I got myself into property.
Yeah.
So at the time, I pitched a mate and said, hey, look, we've always talked about getting into business. I went to Australia again, always overseas, something comes through my head. Went overseas, came back, I was like, right, I'm going to do property. Pitched a mate, said, I've got an idea. We can buy property for free. We can get amongst this. All we got to do here is, I've got a backbone here. I've got good financials. You've got some money. Let's do this. We can buy property for free and make this crazy. He said no. I was like, bugger. About a week later, he's like, let's do one. And then lo and behold, the start of Handsome happened, which was the last kind of 6 years up until probably last year. And we basically started in houses. By the end of the first year, we probably had 20-something. By the end of the next year, we had 40 or 50-something. By the end of it, about 4 years in, we kind of reached, we'd done hundreds. We had 70, 80 houses and commercial properties and things. And then the last 2 years, we've kind of just played around with commercial in both our kind of easy lifestyles. And then we got to a really good point where we both went, actually, we're pushing and pulling each other here a bit. Why don't we, let ourselves go in our own directions, which is amazing, because the friendship at the end of the day is the most important part.
Yeah.
So then that started me going, well, actually, what the hell am I going to do? I've got the visions and the thoughts of what I want to achieve. And then mid last year, it kind of said to me, look, I only like doing big, interesting stuff. I like the complexities. I like the fact that everybody in larger scale commercial, fundraising, capital, are all people that want to have conversations with you because they have $10 million to spend, $20 million. They can get a proper return there. You're not fighting around with the small market of the cats and mice of property.
Yeah.
That stuff there is a great place for people to buy for their first ones. It gives as I love commercial property, it's the best way to get a really decent net return. But I wanted to make sure that was just where my leads came in there and I could hand them and help people buy property.
Yeah.
But then I was like, actually, my actual asset portfolio and what I want to grow has to be in the bigger space. It's more interesting to me.
Yeah.
When you've done enough, you can at least start, we know this from business. Everything that you do has to turn into your passions, because making money or just being in love with the game only gets you so far.
Yeah.
You have to love business to transcend past that. So when you're visioning a larger scale success in any way, it has to come from a desire to be doing that stuff and the complexities and actually nerding out. So that's where commercial spaces and net funds started.
Yeah.
I kind of looked out to the market and said, like, who are the guys I know that are in the same position? Just like partnering, use similar skill sets, but have the opportunity to scale and move into that next place in their business.
Yeah.
And I found two great operators who wanted to come in and basically be like, hey, I've got a property background, large-scale developments in Australia, been doing stuff in New Zealand, all throughout the country. Let's get involved there. Got a guy from the private equity and the fundraising side. My side kind of encompassed both, so there was massive overlap. And then one of the big parts with that was we saw a core offering that just wasn't out there. A lot of funds and people that are offering investors return weren't actually developers or anything themselves in that larger scale. They were fund managers.
Yeah.
If I ask you, like, when you want to put your money somewhere, you want to put it with somebody who's not just going to buy something basic, like an ETF in shares and stocks, or just buy a building and be done. You want somebody who's actually going to work with your money to make you the best return.
Yeah.
So we thought, well, actually, people know our background. People know I know how to make money. Maybe people want to come on the journey. And so far, it's been good. Constant investment every week. We've found an amazing group of buildings. So far, the delivery process is there.
Yeah, cool. Nice. Sorry, carry on if you got.
No.
There was a couple of things you touched on. One slipped my mind that I thought was like something that you kind of brushed over that was really important. But how have you sort of, with these different chapters and things like that, obviously you're a person who's like driven towards finding the most efficient route somewhere, which came up when you talked about like the studying and things like that. How have you balanced that with the fact that like such a big portion of business is just patience? Like, you make it sound like it, but 6 years to build the property portfolio, and it's actually a long time, right?
Agreed.
And there are people that come in that I think look at Digital Simple and they go, I could do what that guy does. And I wouldn't say they'd be a better marketer than me. Maybe they have some marketing skill, and if they actually took the time to do a thing, they'd be able to compete from that perspective. Yes. There'd be a lot of different ways that they could do, but they don't seem to have the patience. I also want to get everywhere as fast as I possibly can all the time, but you can't.
No.
How do you balance that?
That's a great question, because the balance, it has to be internal. If you can't balance it, find someone else to help with the other part. There are people like myself, probably a little like you, that are moving at a bit of pace. We need those people around us that are happily working in a logical, processed order.
Yep.
People that will actually do the DD after you've found the property. People that will take your ideas of tech innovation and apply it to the business and actually take the time to let it work through. You have to believe in your core purpose and a long-term effect, but you need daily operation. So daily operation and actually trying stuff, failing more, actually getting about your business. I try to make sure, for me, I keep growing, I keep working, and I use what I'm terming lately as the sieve, the filter effect, to just keep working down some of the noise.
Yep.
To a point that I'm actually able to make sure execution is done. Each thing has a full system. And if you're not good at it, like myself, I just make sure now I have CRM systems, I have people, I have things there that can give me a delivery line, and I can look in there at any time and I have something to do.
Yeah.
Because I can go, actually, I didn't move that one anywhere. What's happening with that? I can move it there.
Yeah.
And if I'm not moving it there, someone else is moving it there. You know, people find property in a very slow way. Typically, you go out there, ask people, you wait for something to happen. I just know if I have bums on seats, I have a lot of activity because that's what I enjoy, things will fall out when they fall out.
Sure.
You know, bums on seats.
And so maybe you can go over that a little bit more practically. Let's say, because obviously just due to the work that we do, my circles, etc., there's a lot of people that have come on here that are property based, yes. Right? And we've had developers, we've had investors with really different styles to yours. We've had all sorts sort
yes.
of come through. What is your advice to someone, let's say they want to start building up a residential investment portfolio? So I'd consider that to kind of be like step one, yes. Right, before you jump into commercial and shit. If you go bite off too much, it may cause some pain.
Agreed.
What you mentioned buying property with no cash down, like how does that work? Yes. And then what are these things that people could be doing that would maybe help them make the most of some of the opportunities that are out there in property right now?
Amazing. It's an interesting one. It's something that I see that you've already done as well, and people asking their question about resi or commercial. Like residential to commercial, residential to blocks of flats to then commercial is that typical roadmap. That's the way I've done it too. Yep. I mean, the people that jump straight to commercial eat shit for a bit, but when it works, you jump a bracket. The flip side to that is when you're in residential, it's hard to get out. It's kind of like, when you're a teenager, everybody starts off with a different job. Some people go into hospo, some people go into retail and office or whatever they get a weird job of. And you typically find the rest of your career gets defined by those first jobs. If you're a hospo person, you become hospo. So residential, one of the big wins with starting that is it's known to the market. I like to break everything down, as you say, to try and put myself in a position where I can de-risk and make things as simple for my little brain as possible. Yeah. So to me, property only has two parts to it. We have the entry, which is finding property, making sure you know what to do when you find them, and an exit, which is, are they holding it, are you selling it, what's happening at this end, buyers, funding it, the other parts. Funding's probably in the middle, but actually more entry and exit are probably more important than funding. Yeah. You can figure out funding later. People always get caught up on that part. How would I even buy it? So one of the interesting things I'd say to people is go, actually, are you trying to get into residential with nothing? Like, where are you at the moment? Well, I've got a house, I want to do something. Well, if I told you right now you'd go buy an asset, go buy an investment, and it was negatively geared, what are you doing it for? People are buying these new builds, people are buying existing builds, people are buying things that are negatively geared, but they're supposed to be negatively geared until the point that they're potentially going to sell. Yeah. What's the point of that? You're not going to invest in the stock market to be negative, and then one day hopefully it goes up. You're actually buying these things because you want income today. Yeah.
Here's a thing that, and I'm not an expert in property, so please no one take this as any sort of property advice, but here's something that I figured out, right? Yes. So my property purchasing strategy is different, but it's different because I don't play the same game as everyone else. So like I need lowest possible requirement from me from a time perspective, I need lowest possible stress in terms of I actually just want to forget that it exists.
Yeah.
And I found this out accidentally because I've bought a few properties, I've done some flips, I've done some buy and holds that I haven't really held, I've trialed some different things, and I found it all extremely painful. If
wasn't your thing.
Yeah, if I was working 9 to 5, clocking off, and then messing around with the project on the side, different story. It's not how I am, right? So then Jen, and I've told the story a couple of times, bought this home, and then she obviously had to move down to Christchurch. She has to settle the house because you can't just not do that. It's not how it works. Like, first off, you walk from your deposit, but second, you'll get sued. Yeah. It's not, So we buy this house. It's a new build. It's negatively geared, but I can play the negatively geared game. I don't actually care. So it's like to a point where we probably topped it up $400 a week for a year, and it's all good because I have a company that turns over $350,000 to $400,000 a month. It falls in the wash. I don't know where,
Nice.
It's and it's not that I'm unbelievably rich.
That, everybody?
Yeah, but it's not that I'm unbelievably rich, but it's that is actually palatable.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what we do with that, and that doesn't mean that that's my strategy moving forwards, but it means that I can play the new build safe game because I don't need to worry about the weeklies. I'm more looking long term and low stress. We hold on before I finish. Just what was interesting about that is my existing properties that I tenanted out were hell.
Yes.
Like it was hell. It was unpaid rent, unresponsive tenants. I managed them myself. I did all this thing. It was awful, right? This new build property has never given me a single stress. And then interest rates have come down, and now it might be negatively geared by like $150 a week.
Amazing.
And so now what I'm doing is I am looking for yield a little bit more. So I've bought like an apartment at Manchester Square off Williams, for example.
Nice.
Top floor, 1 bed, overlooking the stadium that I'm going to put on Airbnb as like a penthouse, and I'm going to see what I can get yield-wise out of it. And I wanted to buy a house off them because they're legends, and I just wanted to do that.
I mean, they built an amazing product. Yeah. It's just got to be into your model depending on the outcome. This is the point.
Yeah, and then like we're building our own home. Yeah. Which, and this is kind of my full circle of what I was trying to say before, which I think is the thing people need to consider is everyone talks about like property investment like it's the property increases in value, right?
Yes.
And so that's where you make money. What I've noticed just doing like really basic maths, and maths is not a strong suit of mine, is if you actually look at a mortgage calculator, let's say you buy a house for $500,000 or your debt on a house is $500,000 and you pay it off over 30 years, the total amount paid back is like $1.1 million if you like at an average interest rate, right? And so then if at the end of it your house is worth $1.1 million,
you've made no money.
You have a forced savings account. What you have is a forced savings account with downside, where if you don't make a payment, you go bankrupt. Yes. And so it's like a different game if you can buy a house and pay it off in 8 years because you can pay more and you can do these things. Or a rent is
paying it off.
Also,
if somebody's actually paying it off,
their
then
forced
the game
savings
is all
account,
yours.
and then it gets released to you at the end.
Yeah, 100%.
Also, all good. But I think the base, because I'll tell you who that $500,000 to $1.1 million really suits, and it's not the person who sold the house to you, and it's not you. It's the bank. I feel like there's a big part of that where you're like, you're playing someone else's game here and you feel real good about it.
We should become a bank.
Yeah,
I agree.
We definitely can't do that. But like you're playing someone else's game here.
Yeah.
And you know, there's the, I mean, we had that funny story where the person made a comment to you about me owning a Rolex but not a house and things like that. But it was like, that actually suited my chapter at that time in my life because I was building a company where my returns were considerably higher than pulling all this cash out and going and buying a property.
What the hell's that person doing?
Yeah, and was the watch a good purchase? Yeah. I'm not saying that it was, but I'm just saying that it filled a cup for me, and there's something in there. And the house wouldn't have filled that cup. I didn't need that to feel good. I think a lot of people buy that property to feel like they've got security. And there's something primal in that. You want to own the dirt that you stand on and that sort of thing. I'm really excited for our build. I'm really excited to move into that house. Yeah. I'm also really excited to do my best to pay it off as fast as I possibly can so I don't play the bank's game, and the other two properties to have in a position where they kind of fund themselves and I forget about them, and just have low maintenance, easy to manage investment properties where it doesn't involve my time. Then I'll probably jump across to commercial and I'll buy a next office building or something like that.
Amazing. I mean, at core here, there's a bunch of different parts to this.
Yeah.
It's more personal, from my financial advising days, I would always tell somebody, look, the journey's for you. So when you're asking about what somebody should do, it's not a new build versus existing game. There is, I'm probably the worst person to chat to about that stuff because there is different strategies in everything that you do. But if you're asking to actually go back to the start of that and say, like, what should someone do? Well, at core, depending on your time allowance, depending on your money allowance, most people can't afford to be that negative.
Yeah.
And most people can't afford, if they want to have kids or they want to start a business or they lose a job or anything, be negative on a property. So,
I'm not saying it's a good strategy, by the way.
No,
it was an inherited problem.
Yes, inherited problem. But you also look at the quality of that property, where it's located and stuff, versus maybe your existing. So your experience creates a different situation for you. Property at core, has two big benefits over some of the other asset classes. It has income, and if you do it well, it should be positive, or at least service itself from day one, and that's definitely achievable. You just have to ask the question. And it has capital growth. So you're getting both. When you invest in a stock and a share, what happens with that is you get like a 0.1 dividend. You get 2 cents per share dividend. It's tiny. When you have enough of them, Warren Buffett or somebody, yes, you get a massive payout. But for the normal Joe Schmo, you're at a point where you're not getting much return from it. But you get the upside that it could be worth 100% more. We've got the only relationship at the moment with a private equity company that's getting pre-IPO stocks. So this is SpaceX, XAI, I think Canva's coming to the market. We've got a list of these massive ones. Some of them you say the names for the marketing purpose. But people are buying these things and loving them, and because they're getting pre-IPO stocks, and when they launch, they'll go up massively. So they're putting in, one guy put in 10 grand, it's gone up 125% last year. We've got hundreds of thousands, we just got a $50 million order for it, because they have to go through us, we're the only ones with the relationship. So what's really interesting about that is they're looking at that upside for later, but the income along the way is zero. They can pull it out at some stage, maybe, go through the motions. But when you're looking at the upside, you have to have that long-term approach to it. When you're starting out in the early days, you need to make sure that the assets that you're buying come with some sort of upside. A new property is an existing property after you own it. People forget that. One bad tenant, one something, all of a sudden you start losing benefits, you start losing opportunities if you sell it, or if the tenants move on, or wherever it's located. All these things can make a new property all of a sudden bad. So there is some fleshed out benefits in new property. I love them. I think they're a good thing to the market. Ultimately, the day you buy them, you're buying them at or even over value, because so many people are clipping the ticket along the way. But by the time you get to the point of a few years in, yes, it's been lower maintenance, it's been easier to organise, there is some tax benefits, and there's opportunity there. People forget inside residential that a residential place these days, and these investments that are around, are still $500, $700, $1 million for some of these things. You can buy $1 million commercial building with $100 grand net rent roll, 10%. Even if you buy it at 8%, right now the commercial rates are coming down to about 7.5%, give or take. You've already got upside. It's net. They pay everything. So if you're at 10% at 7.5%, you're making money left hand over fist. So I even did the calculation the other day where if you actually look at other returns on commercial, this is the difference with net that I absolutely love. Again, going early doors, why somebody should maybe use their equity to jump straight into commercial in that small space if possible. If you bought a $1.5 million commercial building, it had an 8% return on it, so net return.
That's high, normal? How would you define that?
That's within them. That's probably a little high.
Upper end of high, upper end of normal.
Yeah, really good deal. You'd be in the 10% or so. A big, brand new, nice building. In commercial property, it's worked into basically a semi-class system, like life. A, B, and C classes. So A grade properties, A class properties are properties that are brand new, long tenants. Actually, I'll re-say, the grading system or class system through them is based on tenants, it's based on the lease terms, it's based on the building, it's based on the market. There's so many things. So A being the best, C being the worst.
Sure.
As a property is closer to A, it'll be a lower cap rate. Now the cap rate is basically what the market will accept of a return in order for buying that building. So they would accept a lower return because it's a better building, so 5% cap rate. But it's a bad building, it's a worse area, it's something dodgy on it, it's untenanted or something, no one likes it. 12%, 10%, 11%, something higher, okay? So something like around 8%, you're buying something in Christchurch second hand, maybe a 4-year lease on it, 5-year lease on it, something like that, a cafe or a wee, office or tenancy or a little industrial or something like that, 7-8%.
Maybe comparable to like our building.
Yeah, something like this. You might buy that 7.5%, 8% kind of bracket. So you buy it, let's call it 8% return on the building.
Yep.
But if you put in 40% deposit, if you actually had the cash for that, about 600 grand or so, and the bank rate was 7.5, your return on your cash is 8.75. That little bit of percentage that comes to you and some all comes back to you in your actual cash return. So if you bought it all in debt, it's just 8%. Because that's the building's return. But if you do that right mixture, you can actually get yourself a really nice positive return on your money, way more than you were getting by going negative.
So what do you mean, sorry, by the return on your cash is 8.75%?
So if you do the math on it, the return on the building is 8%.
Yeah.
But you've borrowed from the bank for 60% at 7.5.
Yeah.
So that 0.5 gap in there comes to you. But when you actually apply the math, it's not 0.5 extra on the 8. It's 0.5 and it actually takes you to 8.75.
Got it.
So you're getting this awesome cash win on your money. So you don't have to buy the whole building in cash, which would just give you, 7.5% return. If you bought it in debt, it would be 8% return. But that's talking 1.5 million or so. But people are spending that on residential properties for a return.
Well, like normal residential properties.
I mean, if you're buying in Auckland, that's a first home.
Yeah,
that's what's incredible.
Yeah,
it's just getting people to understand. I mean, even right now, like I've got a building under contract, about 600 grand.
Yeah.
It has a 50 grand rent roll. So
right,
you're already 8-9%.
8-9.
And the fact is, the mortgage at the moment is less. It's just instant every week, increased income coming in. Now, this is not my wheelhouse. This is being sold to an investor. They'll just buy it off me because I don't deal in that smaller space. But it's one of those really interesting ones where you go, look, they're looking at it and going, I make 10 grand a year, 5 grand a year, completely passive. It's got a nice lease attached to it. There's no negative geared.
Yeah.
And if I sold it tomorrow or interest rates and cap rates come down, I'd make more money.
Yeah.
It's kind of commercial's part of being based on income is just amazing for that.
Yeah, right.
So taking that away, going back to the early days, residential can be played the same way. Big thing inside residential is just reminding yourself that your biggest worry in resi is expenses. Expenses can kill the deal. If you've got damage to the property, interest rates change, rates and insurances go up, all these things can make sure your property, it needs to be manageable.
Yeah.
So start out by making sure you buy the best deal you can. That is why people say make your money on the buy. It has to be as efficient as possible.
Yeah.
But then the flip side to that is if you can get into commercial as early as possible, even in that smaller realm, you can do it.
What do you think about an owner-occupier buying a building, like a company like us going, okay, once I settle these properties over the next 12 months, I'm not going to have a massive appetite to go out and hunt out residential deals or whatever, but I do like the idea of buying like a big 400 square metre warehouse and fitting it out as a co-office space and putting like a little gym and a ping pong table down the back and do it, like that suits our brand and that sort of thing. Are you better off leasing? Are you better off buying?
Great question.
Yeah.
This is what we've been doing a lot because we get a lot of people that come through and say, "Hey, I want to do this too. I want to be an owner occupier. I want to sort this process into having my own building that I'm in." I'll take them down a journey of why.
Yeah.
First part of it is, look, we can do this together so it makes it more enjoyable and we can make sure we work through the process. But the big part on selling it or keeping it is the question. Because if you're doing it so you own your building and you've got this asset, right now the value in the building is yourself as a tenant. So is it really an asset? It might be saving you on some costs, maybe. But at the end of the day, it's like renting instead of buying a home. If you rent somewhere and put your money into a mortgage, it could pay you to be in your rental for free. Same with kind of leasing a building. But the one win, if it's good enough for Countdown and all the large supermarkets and a lot of the large distribution centres and all these trucking companies, they'll build a building and know that they've signed a 20-year lease. You could buy a building and sign a 10-year lease or something.
Yeah.
When you put that on the market for sale, what's going to be really interesting about that is that someone will buy it off you at a nice low cap rate, giving you a massive jump, and your profit will probably pay your rent for the 5 years, for the 10 years. It'll pay pretty close.
Yeah.
So that can be a win too if people go owner-occupier. So you're just putting yourself in there for flexibility to make sure your business has a place.
Yeah.
If you're the kind of business that can move, you can be flexible with time, staffing, growth. A mechanics workshop may want to stay where they are.
Yeah.
They'll buy a small building. They probably won't sell it. You might be able to move between office buildings over time, so why not buy them, move in, sell the building off, and have yourself free rent for a bunch of years within the business? Or use that money to multiply the business. Take that profit and literally chuck it in the business and go gangbusters.
So essentially your suggestion is you buy it, let's say it's give or take a 5% return is like where it's valued at, because it has no tenants and it needs a bit of love and blah blah blah. You buy
It'll be higher returns. You'll be buying it at a
no, so you buy it cheaper. You fix it. You sign the lease. You kind of add the value.
Yes.
You then sell it to an investor. You take the margin that then
Yes.
either is profit or covers your rent or does
whatever,
something
yeah.
like that. Yeah, clever.
Well, it's a good opportunity for people, and people forget so often inside all property transactions. There are so many ways to play the game. There's vendor finance that people don't ask for enough. You know, someone wants to sell their building, but it's been untenanted. Hey, well, can you vendor finance 50% of it? I'll give it to you at 7% interest rate, 8% interest
Yeah.
for the year while I do my project. Now the bank gives you 50, they give you 50, and you own the building for free while you do the deal.
What about? I mean, we've spoken about this at length, but you can buy shares in a business for nothing, and the current owners of the business can win.
Yeah.
Like, is that not the most absurd concept ever?
Yeah.
When you think about like the
Vendor finance on a business? Are you talking?
no, because it doesn't even need to be vendor finance.
No.
Like the thing about a company is, and I know this is probably a little bit different with a building, maybe there is a way it could be similar, but like, let's say someone has an established business with a product. So I'll use a blanket example for mine that's not perfectly relevant to anything that I actually have going on. Let's say company has done logos and websites for 100 people.
Yeah.
They have no marketing people. They have great relationships with all the people they've done logos and websites for, right? But they have no ability to turn that into, maybe they have some website hosting fees or whatever. They might do like maybe 10 grand a month of website hosting. All of those 100 people would maybe pay them $2,000 a month for marketing fees if they had a product. So if they brought someone like me into the mix, for free, I could meet all those 100 people, sell 40 of them marketing services. In exchange, I take a third of the company or half of the company or whatever it is. And then they now have $80,000 of recurring revenue. So sure, say somewhere circa 25
Sweet
to
equity,
40% of that is mine. But they still have 40 that they didn't have beforehand, and I train all the people, and I do all the staff, and I build all the systems, and I do all that.
Yeah.
I have a company that spits out X amount of dollars a year, so I get paid for the work that I put in, which I do for free. I get the shares, but only that. There's no risk for the business owner, because if I come in and I say I'll deliver these things, I don't deliver, I don't get any shares. So like, they have a no risk way to just make more money.
It's an amazing way.
Property operates, I suppose, the same way.
Well, it's property and business, and we both have the love of the business side, which is vendor finance is massive in business too, to be on that last subject. But in that, there are so many ways to go, and everyone thinks between property, between resi or commercial or business, you need all this money to do anything.
Yeah.
Why doesn't anyone actually ask the question?
Yeah.
You know, there's enough podcasts, there's enough YouTube videos, there's enough stuff out there now to show you that you can literally actually talk to a business owner and say, hey, I can do this for you in return for XYZ. It can be shares, it can be ownership. There's a sweat equity element. Other times people want the business gone, and again, they will let you stage down the sale process through their own financing methods.
I've had people say, just if you can leave my salary in place, you can just take it in the past. And I'm like, no, thank you. But that, like, you know, like, that deal's out there. Also, what about the fact that, like, boomers own the majority of businesses and they're all about to retire?
Yeah, I think the market, something like 60% of businesses in, I think, New Zealand and America are all owned by boomers, which is, what's boomer at the moment?
55 or something plus. Yeah. It's like, that person will stop. That you're going to have a confronting, and this is probably the angle there, that they're going to realise their company's not worth as much as they thought it was. They're better off vendor financing to get a better end sell price, because they need the recurring revenue anyway, than they are just exiting at a 1.5 times multiple and then having a year and a half of income and then running out of money.
Well, you've seen it time and time again. We have friends that have sold their businesses for great sums, some more than others. And you go through the motions of watching their journey, and when you actually look back, things seem easy. You know, Bill Gates once said, you know, looking back, it was the easiest thing I ever did, but looking forward, it was impossible. When we look at these ideas, and as I remember last year, fortunate enough, we went to Monaco for the F1. Amazing place to be. But I was looking at the infrastructure around Monaco, what they do for themselves. They built the casino to make sure that Monegascans can't actually gamble there. All the money that goes in there is from everyone else, and it basically funds the whole country. And they own all these other hotels. All this money goes out the country. That's why they can do tax-free and they can do all this stuff.
Did you say Monegascans?
That's the Monaco people.
Is it an individual country?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Sorry,
carry on.
Really interesting fun facts on that one. So Monaco, the size of it is now, which is tiny, it's smaller than Central Park in the US. It's smaller. It used to be, if you see it on a map, for anyone that can see me, it's like about that kind of shape. And it used to be something like 5 or 6 times. It had this massive part that went into, I think it's France. And when one of the rulers took over France, I believe it was, they said, look, what are we doing here with Monaco? They went back and forth. He goes, look, if you leave us as an independent republic, you completely leave us alone, you can have all that land, just leave us this, and then let me be my king and let me have my little land. The money they got from that, and I can't remember what it was a tiny amount, they used that to basically make Monaco the Vegas of Europe. And they built a casino, they did all that, and everyone from Italy and France and everywhere on the boats came there, and they just made bank. They were a really poor little city. They literally were broke, they had to sell it off.
Yeah, what a wild...
Yeah, and just reminds you that there's a deal everywhere.
Yeah, what about the Monegascans? Monegascans. It's like Madagascar.
So one of the interesting parts there of being over there in Monaco was I looked at the amazing transfer of wealth that's coming up. And then I looked at all of these people that I was speaking to on the yachts and at the yacht club and all in the hospital areas. I sat there and I was on one of the yachts and I was talking to the guy that basically manages it. And he was like, it's crazy because all of these yachts are owned by a lot of guys that aren't even here for race weekend. They're up and they're either in the yacht club doing something else or they're completely overseas doing stuff. They escape. Yeah. And they're just making money off their opportunities. And you just keep thinking to yourself, wow, get to a level where you think these things are the dream, they're spending the money, they're getting involved in stuff. But now we're going through a stage where all of a sudden that shift of all those people, and they're all older, that have these things, are going to transfer to the next generation. And next generation has now been changed so much by social media, by TikTok. People are getting more showy and people are learning more and adapting. So I think there's a high risk factor out there. When I look at what's already happening in resi and commercial property, when I look at businesses, more people are learning you can do things no money down, or you can do things by negotiating well. But people are doing it without education half the time. Yeah. They're actually going, we all know somebody who's just throwing out offers left, right and centre on properties with no ability to close them. But they're doing it for the sake of, they've been told, and they try to negotiate with you, and they're just trying to be hardcore with no knowledge backed, and then they never close on it anyway. That's happening around the world right now, and a lot of these business owners that I'm speaking to as well on the business side, they're just so afraid of selling it because they think their brand will go under. They're afraid of rolling it up because they don't know what to do. They're kind of just in this real stalemated position. Yeah.
It's gonna be like I think that there's like a sweet spot of that new age tech versus too easy access to the world. And I see a little bit, I've been really impressed. I've got my brother in working for me at the moment. He's younger, he'd be 22 or 23, and I've been really impressed by his work ethic. He messaged me and said, I don't want to go work in bars, I'm going to go overseas, and I want to work for you, and I promise you I'll work really hard and I'll do a good job and you can get me to do anything you want, kind of thing. And I was like, okay. And I didn't really expect him to. And the reason why I didn't expect him to is because I've had a bit of challenge. I've had some negative experiences through that age group, and I don't ever want to lump people into a thing. I don't agree with it. People often talk about my age group as if it's all people with no horsepower, and I know that there's outliers within it, but there's got to be something in that. There's this balancing act between access to tech and understands technology versus a little bit of old school, a little bit of look you in the eye, shake your hand, do what you'll say you'll do, a little bit of that. I think the combination of both is the key. It's not all leverage. A little bit of it's old school values, and the people that I know that do well have old school values. They respect people. They pay bills on time. They do things properly.
Let's go off on a tangent though.
Please.
The youth right now, and I use that term as a mid-30s man. I'm not sure, our age gap, I'm not even sure that we're in it. We've got the money and ability and brain power to try and execute, but the things are moving so fast down in the early stages. AI has come through and I use it every day now. I just can't believe the rapid rate at which things are happening. Even the growth of cryptos, your meme coins. I got one video on meme coins, and then next thing now, I'm just watching what's happening in it, and it blows my mind. Some kid, whatever it was, put $5,000 on Trump coin and woke up to $25 million. Great. That story is happening a lot. I went onto one of the meme coin, I think it's DAX Screener, DAX Screener. Great thing to go look at. It has all the meme coins online. Really interesting part in there is you can click in and you can actually go to trades today and people that have bought and sold out. One guy's just sitting there with billions. Another guy's sitting there with like just millions made. Some guy put in $100, some guy puts in, and you'll see the big whales come in, and they'll put down like 300 million on a meme coin. And then it'll be like negative 150 mil. And they're just like, cool, just move on. You're like, people out there are actually playing in an entirely different game to what we realize. And I used AI to help me pick stocks when I decided to get into the stock side of stuff late last year. Sold off some properties, had a bit of money there. I was like, this is cool. I'll have some fun with stuff while I'm sitting around doing property deals. I literally said what's up and coming, what's pegged to grow over the next while, did a little bit of chart analysis through it, just uploaded photos, asked the question. It spun out like 4 different AI things. I just put in some money and I had like 30% overnight.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, thank you, sold out, and then just kind of went through the motions of having some fun over the last couple of months. And it's been a really interesting way of making money. Luckily, we've had an interesting time in the market, but using AI to actually grow our businesses. You can ask it to write you a marketing plan. You're already using it well beyond my abilities in marketing.
Yeah.
But what it can do, even right now, I asked it to give me 100 different topics to talk about as a daily post. I'm letting that give me organic decision making through it, but I don't have to now think of 100.
Yeah.
It's already there, and I can just kind of look through and go, oh yeah, that one's a good one. I'll just make it up on the fly.
It's like we're well beyond daily use of it. Like it's a big part of what we do. But
it's integrated.
The more I understand it, the more I dislike it. Is probably the answer. It's like, and I'm setting up a business in this space. I love it.
Yes.
For that independent business to use it as a tool and more will be revealed in time. But I passionately love the product and how it works. It's also really funny because, like I was talking to my coach this morning after our session. He's a builder. He's like, it's real crack up how everyone was saying that robots were going to come and take our jobs, and now it's all you like creatives and techs and stuff that are at risk. And I was like, that is fucking funny. Yeah. He's like, I wanted a t-shirt design for my coaching clients, and AI did it, and it was free, and it was sick. And I'm like, you are correct.
It was always going to be those people, really, the stuff that is on computers.
Yeah, but it gets used with me a lot in reverse. And so where it's really powerful is if you understand it, you understand how it's a tool, and you understand how to use it, it gives you massive amounts of leverage. When you just solely rely on it, it sucks.
Yes.
Because you don't know how to use it properly.
Yeah.
Like the tool itself is extremely powerful, but you imagine you just like give a caveman an iPhone and you just go use this. They'd faff around, they wouldn't use it properly, they wouldn't understand the nuance of it, they wouldn't understand any of those things. So I get an email that's copy and pasted directly out of ChatGPT, and I'm like, man, I'm techie. Like, I get this shit. I'm like, I know what you're doing. And I'm like, can you just write me an email? Like, this is just one of those ones. And like,
American spelling, so it's just copy and paste.
Super,
like,
even the formatting with the lines and shit. That's super appropriate in a situation. But when I've gone to you and I've made a request that requires your expertise, I need you to come back to me with your expertise.
Yeah, 100%.
Does it help me write legal agreements? Did it help me? I actually used it to fight a legal case. Like, it's extremely powerful. It's amazing. Awesome. And I'm leveraging it.
It's only going to get better.
Agreed.
So the
100%.
Things that you may dislike about it now are so seamless that it'll become part of it. Like, it's integrated into our email systems already.
Yeah, I think it's user error. Like, that's what makes me dislike it.
So is life.
Yeah. But that is, I think, the limiting factor with it is like my team use it heavily, I use it heavily. Every now and again, I have to pull my team up and be like, that was misuse. That was not appropriate. That's not how this works. That's not what this tool is for. This tool is not to make you lazy. This tool is to make you better.
Yeah.
And if you approach it that way, it's awesome. I've used it. Like, I've signed some big accounts with it doing a bunch of the strategy heavy lifting for me, and then I take it and I write it into the strategy doc and I use it. It's just the habit is important. Like I said, we got some stuff happening in the space that is absolutely mental.
Oh, I'm excited to hear about that.
Yeah.
It's funny because as we talk about AI and as we go through the next generation of this conversation, when we take this back, and I'll try to make sure we keep going full circle, the property side and those early questions about what someone should do using, I suppose, my my knowledge and talent on the side of that, I go, well, right now you can actually ask those questions to AI as well.
Yeah.
If we look at the most basic steps of it, how does a property transaction work? Ask that question there. Where are people that are doing those transactions? It will deliver you information. Yeah. If you look at the other half of it, which is how I like things, buyers, tenants, funding, all these kind of questions too. You can ask it, how do I fund this deal? You can give it a deal and ask it your thoughts. I used it to go, well, actually, I've got a bunch of opportunities in the large-scale industrial space, land, builds, all these things. People are saying, I've got the funding, I've got everything organised to do these really great opportunities. But I need to make sure my tenant pool, that I have people to constantly talk to, is there. So I said, look, what are the uses of 1,000 to 2,000, or 2,000 plus square metre, I think I said 1,000 or 2,000, whatever it is, square metre industrial buildings? What are the uses for these buildings in New Zealand? Give me 100. It spat out that. And I was like, great, can you name me businesses in each of these areas, 100 of them in each area in New Zealand? It spat out that. I then took those businesses, put them in a different AI system and said, can you give me the asset managers and property managers and everything of all these businesses? It spat out all the connections, email addresses and all of that. And you're like, holy shit, I just nailed
saved
this.
me a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or longer.
Yeah.
And some overseas workers, you know? It was always going to be a quicker process. And as it gets all integrated together, you're going, wow. That if you are somebody that's able to work and hunt for stuff, AI is going to transform that. But if you're asking those core questions too about your starting portfolio and what to do, you can ask some of those questions online.
Yeah.
But asking somebody who does it is also going to cut out the noise.
Yeah.
We can bring it down, you know. It's hard because we all know there's the investment consultants around, the sales guys, and I look at, because I'm in the property space, I'm in the fundraising space, you know, people, it's been really nice. In the last couple of weeks, I've had somebody give me, hundreds of grands inputs. I've had a 350, a 400, a 1.4, a 9 million. I've had all these amounts just be like, hey man, I just need you to manage my money and get into this inside the building space. And I love that because you take that responsibility really seriously. But when you look at the building, actually the commercial property side and the residential side, we ask ourselves a question about the consultants you're speaking to. Because if you're talking to a fund about money and they're just buying those done assets, they're just a fund manager buying something and clipping the ticket. That's great. You just get nice conservative income. That's cool. If you're talking to an investment consultant and they're selling you something that they're making money on, you go, well, they're like a real estate agent. They're just finding some properties for me and buying. It's XYZ return. Cool. Hands off. It's not that it's a bad thing. It's just always make sure you ask the question where you're getting your advice from everybody, including myself. I'm trying to transact deals too. I'm trying to make sure that my people that are investing with me see an open book and we're actually able to make sure that they get a return, but I am too. I'm not doing it for free. So it's a balanced approach, but you need to make sure each person you get advice from is in line with your direction. You know, we spoke about that alignment of what we're working on. That's a big part of this. What anyone's doing right now, you and I are opposite on the side of property versus business. You know, you love reinvesting in what you're doing, and it's been massively successful to see you grow this far. But on the property side of stuff for me, I'm like, well, I'd buy a better deal. And you're like, well, that's too much brain power. I'm like, yeah. Like right now, me actively negotiating on businesses to buy, I'm like, man, I just have to turn my complete brain back into it. And then you got to ask yourself, I'm buying a business with a 7-figure profit involved in there. That sounds really nice. It's a really good spot to be in. But I have to do so much work, and I'm good at property.
Yeah, and it's also like, you know, business profit can go fucking fast, especially when you're looking at like swapping out key staff or, you know.
The good thing is in that space, you're buying management a lot of the time.
Yeah, so, it's 7-figure bottom lines.
I do think heavily, and I believe this more than anything, and you're really good at it these days, you have to outsource. Everything in your arsenal, whatever you want to do in life, ask people the question, how can I do this? How can I do that? Can you do the outs for me? Find an employee straight away. Ask the right people to work for you because you can't do it all. It's just too difficult.
Yeah. Look, it is just one of those, like, it's a never-ending pursuit for me between the being a control freak that wants to do everything and I now have 26 people. Like, it's a dichotomy, but I've made some really cool hires this year, and there's been some people that have come in that have made some big impact. I think it's helping the company shape up, so it'll be cool to see what. Are you
somebody that measures yourself on anyone else at all? Do you find yourself looking at mostly just in the mirror?
Yeah, Yeah,
there's competition out there. There's people you want to be better than that, but
like, to be fair, that like it appears to me that the general market feels more passionately about us than we feel about the general market. And it's been really cool. I've found a few agency owners across New Zealand that I actually have a really aligned moral set with, that believe in the same things that I have really great friendships with, and we catch up, and it's not like a dick swinging contest. It's like genuine people who care about an industry and want to see it work really well. We do have a deregulated industry, especially when you step into digital, and with that there are providers that I don't morally agree with the way they do things, but I don't feel towards that. I just am like, I don't like that, and I just move on with my life. So they seem to feel towards us.
Well, I think one of your skill sets too, and I love this about some of the big developers around, some of the people that are in the space like myself in my area, you're really good at it. You could actually just show someone under the covers. Yeah. You could show people your team. You can show people that the actual systems and things you work on to show that you are professional. You're not just click and boost post on Facebook.
This is a business.
Yes.
Like it's a, like
definingly
I have people
different
sitting in Christchurch that work for me. It's not, I don't take it. I mean, I had someone message me the other day, and he was just like, how do you, essentially he was like, I'm starting an agency and I've got my first customer and this is what I want to do. I want to hire my first staff member and this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? And I was like, don't. And he was like, why? And I was like, because like the overseas staffing thing has a place, but what you're telling me is that you want to do something similar to what we're doing, and so then it doesn't have a place. He's like, why? And I was like, well, it's your retainer fee. And he told me, and I was like, so how would you feel if a company came to you and you paid them that much money and they just farmed it off overseas and they didn't and he was like, oh, and he's like, well, how do you protect margins? And I was like, what are you doing this for? It's like, do you want to build a business, or do you want to because for me, I just want to build a company, and I know that everything will sort itself out around it. And I have people that watch margins and people who do things like that. I have an advisory board now. I have all this stuff, all these people that care about these things, right? I care about product. I care about client outcomes. I care about relationships with clients. I just don't really care. I don't really care about anything else. Provided we're not trading in a way that is dangerous or irresponsible, it's not, I don't care. I don't care. What I care about is having the best product in the market. 100%. And so when I feel like we don't, I throw myself hand over fist into trying to make that product right, not trying to squeeze an extra 10% out of the margins thing. And I know when you're playing business properly, you should. I just don't care. This is a place for me to produce. It's not a place for me to play the game like everyone else is playing.
If their margin comes, it comes through value delivery.
Yeah.
Your job is not to figure out how to find a tax loophole, to figure out how to create the best spreadsheet for XYZ.
No.
That your job is growing the business.
Yeah.
Now that's a hard part, because in order to exit from the business, in order to have a holiday, do anything, you can't be the only person in that.
Yeah.
You have a great sales team around you. A lot of companies don't.
Yeah.
I spoke to a guy with a multi-million-dollar business. He's still the only salesman. Large product, so he sells to farmers and things like that. But I was sitting there going, you actually have no fail-safe, because you haven't actually built a value chain of your business. You've got just you, and you believe in what you do. That's nice, but you're getting to that end game, and you're like, well, actually, there is no opportunity for you to sell this business to anyone, and you've got no succession.
And being responsible involves having a contingency plan for if any person involved in a company got hit by a bus that morning, it could continue on. And Maddie, a new hire, who's very experienced, she's definitely a better leader and manager than I am. She's really big on that, and it's sort of, I suppose, caused even me to be like, well, I'm not going to get hit by a bus. And she's like, it doesn't matter. That's not the point. The point is that we have a plan for everything 100%. Under any circumstances.
Business Bible.
It's responsible.
Yeah.
It's just responsible.
One of the age-old things is the business Bible. Can literally any employee pick up almost any job.
Yeah.
If you look at McDonald's, one of the largest food distributors in the world, largest restaurants, you just go, wow, somebody at 16 can walk in there, be handed a manual, and run the restaurant. The managers of a McDonald's are like 18. And you're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Would you give an 18-year-old Digital Simple?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean, you're probably not going to give it to anyone else right now anyway.
Yeah.
But it is that big, deep question, because I fundamentally, when I look at people without succession plan, go, you're actually doing your future clients and your current clients a disservice.
Yeah.
Because you are amazing. I love that. However, when you stop this, all your amazingness goes by the wayside, and someone else who you think is worse than you is going to take your client.
Yeah. This year for me, as far as Digital Simple is concerned, is a ruthless pursuit of consistency of product, consistency of outcome, predictability, all the things that no company can say, because they're just too hard to figure out. I get why no one can say it. It's hard. So I'm going to go figure it out, and I'm you've used the term fortunate a number of times, and I quite like that word. I'm fortunate enough to have a business that actually day by day runs really well, and it's getting better and better over time. My EA started, new digital marketing lead, we've got a few new staff, and we've got a few things happening. It's getting better over time. So what's important now is that I take that opportunity and I use it to double down and make something that's like unshakable. That's the...
Accountability and attack are so important. You know, the heavy trends for both of us this year. There is something that I like to break down, I suppose, the mental side of a business, the job side of a business for anyone. Active and reactive. People forget this so often. You know, when you build a business to be reactive, you're just not actually attacking. You're not firing cylinders. You're not growing. You are being really good at putting out fires. But when you're on that side, reactive's actually the easier of the jobs.
Yeah, 100% it is.
If you can put out some things out there and wait for stuff to come in, it's actually easier. People make lots of money being reactive, but they never really get there because they wonder why their business failed or why they didn't do anything, because it actually takes work to push.
Yeah.
You know, and I self-claim very cleanly, I've been reactive for years. I've been active in my areas, which is either a capital raise, make sure I talk to the banks, make sure everything gets organised, but I wasn't the front of house for the last bunch of years.
Yeah.
So turning back into active, I'm like, wow, it's such a fun journey to be. And I tell more people now, look, your business will ultimately grow or fail or do whatever it's going to do by your activeness.
Yep.
And then it needs to turn that into employees' activeness and then have a reactive system behind it. Something that whenever something happens, you become a solution provider, and then other employees can become solution providers.
Yeah.
That has to be the way they survive. But everyone will default to their easy street.
Yeah.
And defaulting to easy street is reactive. Oh, I can just open my emails, I can see a job, and then I'll just work on that.
And it's like, it's actually quite, your body is hardwired towards that. Like there's dopamine that comes to task in, task complete, task in, task complete, task in, task complete. And what's really challenging is to go, I'm going to let someone else do the task, and I'm going to figure out a way that no one ever has to do the task again. That doesn't feel good. That takes months, years to figure that out. It's
but then
interesting.
there's that flip side too, which is the constant why we hire BDMs.
Yeah.
They're people that love to set things on fire and just keep like buying the next house because the last one's on fire. But they literally love to run out there. You know, they'll be doing that all the time, and they need the reactive support system behind them to be able to make it happen. And one of those interesting thoughts is people don't see property that way. That's what I always loved when I wanted to get into property. Was I came from business background. I wanted to make sure, you know, and I have my success and failures within it. But I look at it and I go, it has to fundamentally be a business. Yeah. So if you want to buy, you know, 10 rentals, 5 rentals, whatever the listener's dream is in property. I remember hearing somebody say, you know, they had 10 rentals. And I was like, wow, that'd be pretty cool. You know, I just had my first house kind of thing. I was like, 10 rentals sounds like heaps. You know, 20,000 a year, 25,000 a year, 200 grand a year. That sounds ridiculous when you're, even if you're on that, to have that passive sounded amazing. When you actually do the math on residential and that and making your plans through what you actually need, that's the second part of this, is actually building it towards what you're trying to achieve. You know, I bought a block of 10 in one go. Yeah. You know, 200 grand rent roll on one building. You know, you'll buy a multi-million dollar commercial building and I have hundreds of thousands. I've got a building under contract at the moment for $38 million with a $3.3 million rent roll. Yeah. You're like, that's great. This is one building. And you can have a multi-million dollar rent roll. And it goes, well, some of the stuff that's crazy about the property side of business is you need that mechanism that is finding tenants, finding funding, finding the right distribution out from you to actually be able to take it and also do those deals. Provide value, make sure you're there throughout this whole thing. Yeah, sure. Okay. Hey, this has been epic. I have a question. It's a closing question that everyone gets asked. So you've gone through your story, and then obviously you've given a heap of insight into the property and the business and the way you view things and stuff like that. The closing question for you is, if you were to go back to the start, if you imagine little Michael at Red Cliffs, and you could change one thing or do one thing differently along your journey, what would it be? It's a great question, and I think the first part for me is probably in an early stage, start asking more people beyond me for advice. I lived insular in my own brain. You know, it's that feeling of thinking you know it all, or that you can study it, you can learn it, you can do it, and maybe even a little bit of fear of actually reaching out. People aren't asking people above them enough questions. People are happy to share. People are happy to do stuff, whether it's property or business. People are willing to be there for a coffee. You know, I hate that as you probably do too, let's go grab a coffee.
Yeah.
Let's just have a quick phone chat and we can at least figure out where we're both at.
That's actually gone from me now. People just straight up DM me on platforms and just ask me questions.
Yes.
They don't even offer me the coffee anymore. Maybe it's better. I just send them a voice note back and it saves all the...
No. Just give me your business. No. And I believe that wholeheartedly, which is... I have all the time in the world for the young trying to do it. I have the time for the world for the old trying to do it.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's about understanding that process. I am a full energy front of house guy. I like to be out there meeting people and the opportunities that come from that. That's how I've found my greatest investors, build experience over time.
Yeah.
But it just has to be at core the ability that you actually ask people about what you're interested in.
Yeah.
Try stuff, fail more, be involved. You know, I just remember door knocking like yourself when I was younger, but I just came up with an idea that I want to sell something and just started door knocking down a street and thought, I'll try and sell this over the course. I remember trying to do donations and all sorts of things just to try and get that people acumen up. But I spent too much time in my own head trying to think there was a normal, logical process to success or to happiness or to whatever I was trying to achieve. I thought uni was the right way. I thought this or that was the right way. I didn't actually go find a real estate agent. You know, how many people do we know that became a real estate agent at like 18, 19, 20 like these days? You're like crazy.
Yeah.
So if I was talking to anyone these days, whatever area you're in, you want to be a doctor, you know, you want to be in manufacturing, you want to be you could literally just walk into a business that you like and say, hey, like I'm interested in this business. Could you tell me about it? Tell me how this works. Tell me
Can
what
I
I should
even
do.
work for you for
Can
free
I
for a
work
little
for you
bit?
for free?
Have a look. Yeah.
Get involved. And you know, people like right now, it's been interesting because I've got people out there that call me up and I say, well, here's what I'm looking for. You find this stuff. This is how you'll get paid.
Yeah.
You're interested. Here's an opportunity. It doesn't cost me anything, but I can teach you something and I can take you through the journey. That would be my earliest piece of advice to myself. Was I look at so many people that were so amazing at asking, and I look and go, I never did that.
Yeah.
I could have, it took me into my mid-20s to really get going. Whereas I'm seeing people in there, well, even late, into my 30s really. Whereas I looked at people now and they're 18, 20, just be like, hey man, can we talk about something? And I'm like, wow, I never would have done that.
Yeah. Nice. Hey, someone's listened to you. They want to talk to you. Obviously, you're good at talking. How do they find you?
You can find me through a variety of ways. I'm quite social on LinkedIn at the moment. I'm making sure Michael Karabassis on LinkedIn is out there doing its thing. There's commercialspaces.co.nz. That's our side of basically hunting tenants, making sure we're out there finding business owners that we want to partner with for property transactions. So there's that side. There's also Net Funds, which is our fund company, which has its 3 core offerings. So the Net Funds side gives people an opportunity. Both those websites, whether that or Facebook, just basically Michael at Commercial Spaces or Michael at Net Funds. They'll both reach me. Cool. And it gives people a good opportunity to come have a coffee or a chat. Yeah, sweet, man. Hey, there was not much filling of time with that. We've it's been very easy. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and sit down with us. There's a heap of stuff to take away from it. So thank you. I really appreciate it. Man. Cheers. Hey, if you have made it this far, thank you very much for listening. Make sure you follow us on Instagram, business.simplepodcast. Check us out on Spotify, YouTube, follow on all of those platforms as well. And stay tuned. We're going back to a really high posting frequency this year. This podcast is a huge priority of mine, and I really want to keep sharing it with everyone, and I really appreciate everyone's feedback. So thank you very much. Thanks again, Michael. You're an absolute legend. Right back at you.